throw out a general question to get started. What do you guys see as the most impactful new trends in the gaming industry? Whoever wants to take this first.
I think something I'd like to cover is the proliferation of QR codes. I mean, it's always been there, it's been part of the stuff, but I think now, especially just because of the pandemic in general and restaurants and everything else, a lot of people, even though they've been out there, a lot of people have no idea how to interact with those things. And now it's pretty common. I don't know anyone that doesn't know how to pull the phone out, put the camera, do it, and then take you to wherever it is you need to go from that point. So I think some of those things on teaching people how to interact with their environment in a different way because of COVID. And that's going to open up new innovations as well, but also, too, I think it makes it really easier adoption of some concepts, like cashless and some of those pieces.
Yeah, I'm going to say that the QR codes, I think, are symbolic of something that I think that we've always thought about boomers as being lagging behind in technology, and this pandemic has really kind of brought them back up to speed. So that's one, well, me too. That's one of the big changes that I see, and then I see a lot of changes in the way that we communicate with customers and new customers that we see now.
I'll take a little different approach, saying that COVID as I think has really proliferated online gaming, and in some ways been very much a positive to the gaming industry, but in other ways placed more pressure on the traditional casino floors in remaining competitive, getting people out of their houses or to come into casinos. So the bar has been raised. The good news is that I think at the show, with a lot of companies, the industry is stepping up to provide additional technology and concepts of quite learning and evolving how to get those players to, instead of walk by the casino floors on their way to the restaurant or to the show or to the pool, perhaps take a step onto the casino floor, which has been a challenge for us for many years. And I think some of the things we'll discuss today and some of the technologies at the show this year are going to help us achieve that and remain relevant as we evolve.
John, continuing on that, getting into some more specifics, what do you see happening in table games and electronic table games, and what types of products that your company provide? What are the big changes and trends that you see?
So I guess to continue on what I was just saying is, I'll share an experience we learned in the past 60 days since COVID, we came out of COVID. I call it the bridge. But casinos, you spend hundreds of millions, if not billions, creating infrastructure and a destination for people to go to, of various sizes and shapes, different amenities. And we haven't been very successful as an industry in creating that bridge, as I was saying before. When a show gets out, getting a husband and wife or some friends to actually walk onto that floor and spend some time, or when they come out of a restaurant, or come out of the pool. And what we've learned recently is a lot of times we thought some products were solitary, table games. And we started testing love seats. And what was shocking is the day after we would put a love seat in front of a single seat unit, couples would sit down by the droves. And we started to realize there was perhaps a demand for people wanting to come onto a casino floor together, but unable to find a place to go. Whether the table games were, there's 2 positions at a blackjack table, but there's 4 of us sitting after the pool wanting to go and hang out together, we were separated. Or my wife and I wanted to go and do something on a casino floor, and she would go to the slots or I would go to the tables. So what we started to do as Interblock is to create a medium, an environment by which people, when they come to the casinos, can stay together. What we're learning, and it's fascinating, there is much more a social component to the casino floor than we realized. There is a big demand for people to want to stay together and not separate. And as an industry, we have, I think, in some ways done an incredible job, but there's a long ways to go in how to create that bridge for people to hang out together, have fun, socialize, and then obviously still have a solitary environment for those people that want to be alone. And so for us in the table game world, we've created a stadium format that you'll see, I think, Since January, we've installed stadiums in 85% of the casinos on the Strip in downtown, and it's climbing. And I think one of the primary drivers of that is, again, people wanting a place to sit together, socialize, and have fun. So that's one of our biggest takeaways.
That's really insightful. And right here at the Venetian, they have stadium games, baccarat, blackjack, and roulette, I believe, right over by the sports book near the Strip exit. So you can see them for yourself. Skyelar, Choctaw just opened a rather large expansion of your Grand Casino. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the new products or the new developments that you incorporated into that new expansion?
So with that, there's a couple things, I guess, for me in general as we were moving through this expansion. And we added about 3,200 machines, 1,000 hotel rooms, some venues, a 3-acre pool, a bunch of things going on. But during COVID, all this has happened during COVID, we're doing that. But there's been a difference. We were a little behind, I think, when it comes to pre-COVID, from being as innovative, getting some of those technologies in place. And some of it just because the way the business was moving, the pace that we're happening necessarily wasn't there for us yet, right? And I think that that's kind of come to light. We're a little behind on some things, to be honest. And that's not going to be any different than some of y'all. So I don't think that everybody, the place we got there at Duran's is absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's a huge place, but even we have a lot of things that are on the market that we don't have implemented yet. So not everybody's got all their stuff together. So don't be intimidated by something like that. There's always opportunities there. But it's finding either things that we were using, maybe not as efficiently, and also too is trying to integrate new technologies, whether or not it's cashless. We're in that process right now. We're still not doing cashless. And I don't think it's necessarily something, I think when we talk about any kind of innovations or things about casino floors of the future, is understanding too is that some of the stuff isn't like if you're going to do it, it's going to change, it's a game changer, it changes everything for you. But the things having those pieces like is look at cashless, how to get it implemented. And so it's there so the guests can start adopting it and you can figure out your comfort level with it, how do you market it, whether it's a wireless dispatch system, if it's any other type of technology exists and you're going out and look at those pieces, is that there's probably some opportunity for it on any size property, big or small. So don't think that some of the stuff that we're looking at is solely just because we have that 7,300 machine property. And that's the only reason why it makes sense for us. Right, our dispatch system, we use a company called CIS. I even use it in a travel plaza that's only got 50 games. Obviously, you don't need a dispatcher, right? But with that, you get the metrics that are associated with that, your KPIs, you're able to let the staff know that you're able to keep track of what's happening so they're not being lazy because usually those things are remote and people aren't there checking in on them as often. So there's a lot of use for a lot of technologies coming out that's not solely just going to be for the big places or for the Las Vegas Strip. There's going to be opportunities for everybody. So for us, most of the stuff has been the implementation of QR codes and a lot of ways interacting, obviously some of the easy stuff like menus, everything everybody's doing. We did some things with some of the art to have interactive experiences with QR codes. So you have through the app, you have an art walk, right? So you got a QR code, you learn about the piece that the tribal citizen made for the casino. Then it takes you on the path to your next position. And again, there's another interaction point. And you draw them through the entire building. And along the way, some of them are art pieces, some of the architectural treatments that were done in the building. So a way to kind of create an experience that isn't just focused on the game, right? So it's trying to find those type of things and how you can interact with guests, but it doesn't require that they have to interact with someone else too. They can do it at their own pace. And that's going to go with everything. That's why cashless makes sense for people where anything's happening like that. Is that you give the guests the opportunity that if they want to interact with someone, they can. Other players, you give them, if they want to be social, they can be social. If they don't want to be, they can do that as well. If I don't want to interact with the cashier, you need kiosks. But you can gauge that with your guests, how many are going to need those type of things. And any type of technology that's coming is just based on the way that they use it. But if you give them those options so they can use it, and I see guests that have used a kiosk cash out tickets, and then the moment they hit a big enough ticket where they feel like they can tip, well, then they'll go to the cashier window because they want to, and they want that interaction, and then they tip. But then they don't feel some sort of pressure because they're not over here. So there's all sorts of but just different type of psychological reasons why people approach things differently. And that's why all this stuff makes sense too. It's giving those options So that it's no different, why Netflix and those things are successful is because you give them options to choose how you want to consume it. So like if I want to watch one of my favorite movies, I can watch it on my phone and sit in the back room somewhere. I can watch it on the 84-inch TV. I'm going to enjoy it more here on that big one. But if I want to, I can watch it on my phone. I can choose how I want to consume it. So the same thing is if you give your guests options where they're able to choose how they want to interact with you, if they want to go to cashier, if they want to use cash, if they want to use Tito, if they want to go cashless, and put those pieces in place. So we're not, it's not like the Resorts World, I'm going to go check it out. Obviously, they've got a whole bunch of things they've been permitted to launch that new property. We had some infrastructure things just because we had all the existing building. As we added on to it, we didn't want one part of the building, we need to do something, and you can't in the other end of the building. It's confusing for the guests as well. Whenever things are just kind of spotty where you can use it. But so we're going through all that now and evaluating everything, but there's definitely a lot of options out there.
Well, Skyelar, I'm a little nervous about asking a follow-up, but from an operational standpoint, how is cashless, how impactful is cashless? Is it as big an evolution as Tito was in terms of your operations?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is if it's fully utilized, and that's on the team end, right? And I don't think that it's at that point that everybody's just going to jump on board and everyone's going to use cashless, right? But it definitely needs to be there so the guests can be comfortable with it. You can be comfortable as an operator on how you're going to market it, how you implement it, do different things. It's got to be there for you both to be able to learn together. But it can be, but we have the interim too, you have tickets. And there's some technology's gotten better, we do tickets at the table, right? And so now you got that, you get it from the ATM, and go to the table. One of the missing pieces would be if you could take a ticket to a food thing, you would pay with your Tito, and they give you a Tito and change, and you're back out. Then that's cashless right there, right? I mean, you're not even using cash at that point. But obviously, there's all the things from operationally because of cashless, because the less you're handling that money, all the people products that are less room for error, and you're just more efficient with you, you're going to make more money. So it will be, and it is going to be different in every market and every different type of property on adoption rates and how it gets to that point. But I definitely think that if you're not looking at it, you should be, and just figuring out how you can do it. There's a lot of different options out there. Some require a big infrastructure type of commitment. Some aren't as invasive. There's some other options out there to get you to that point. But if you look at it, start trying to feel your way through it and figure out a way to start making it available so your guests can ask those questions and learn how to sign up. Your associates on the floor can figure out how it works. You get a whole education internally for all your guests and also your internal guests for everybody that works for you, right? So it's definitely something that's going to be something that needs to be there, but it's not something that just happened today, but we've got to be doing it right now to be ready for that, right? And that's going to be the thing with any type of innovation, to make sure that at least it's there. Like even something we put in Interblock to begin with in the games before. But the thing was, we had a couple, right? We're going to have a couple, and so the guests can be exposed to it. And at first, no, it just really wasn't a thing. But now it's come to the point, I have quite a few. I have a whole stadium set up. I have a couple of them. I have several other manufacturers too, the same kind of products like that. And they do well, right? But I would never even gotten to that point if I didn't have a few just to even try that out, let the guests approach it and see how they would react to it, and figure out how it is that we make it work. And so that's the way it is with any innovation, is just to make sure that you're trying.
I'm sure John wants to respond to that, but I'm going to go back to Julia and ask how marketing is changing in the casino in the future. What are you doing differently? What are you doing more of?
So I think I'm going to go back a little, and the common theme that I found with John and Skyelar both is about creating experiences that are different and that customers are really wanting. And I think that having sat on the marketing side for so long, one of the things that seemed to struck me was that I think that in the past, as we built these boxes and built these experiences, we kind of built them for our own sake, the things that we knew worked, the things that we knew were profitable. And now that really has come back around to building things that customers are looking for and finding ways, and customers are becoming much more comfortable with newer things because of things like Netflix, because they now see that they have options for how they can have their own experiences. And I think it's a great thing that we as operators are doing that, or providing them the tools for them to sort of create their own adventures. And I think that with marketing and communications, that's evolved too, because in the past, we have used the channels that we knew worked. We knew television did this, we knew we had to have billboards, we knew we had to have this. And then, channels that were more digital when social came about, and they were really not looked at from the perspective of being of value as communication channels. And we've seen a big shift in how customers are communicating, how customers are receiving our communication, but more importantly, how they're communicating with us. Because our communications prior to maybe, 10 years ago were really all one way, and now they're really two-way. And I think that's the biggest evolution that we're seeing right now.
I guess when I think about technology for the casino industry, I always use a couple of specific analogies that everybody had. Most people came on an airplane to get here, not everybody. And if you remember 7 years ago, when we went to the airport, we would check in and we'd wait in that line and we'd go up to an attendant and check our bags and get checked in. And now, virtually within a 7-year period, there's kiosks that we all walk up to and we check ourselves in. If you're on the Las Vegas Strip, you're going to be shocked that some hotels, whether it be Flamingo or Harrah's, they're using kiosks now to check people into the hotels. Technology is evolving, and I think because of COVID, what happened was there was a lot of operational changes that we were all forced to go through. We were forced to deal with employee issues, changing culture as far as the amount of players we were allowed to let into our casinos. And as a result, technology, I think, is something that became more dominant and something we can utilize as an industry, like the airline industry, like the hotel industry, and tons of others. I mean, there's a reason why people are spending billions gaming on this little screen. And that's not as nice as what we offer. We offer a much nicer experience in our casinos, whether it be with slot machines or table games or cashless. And I think the one area that has fallen behind it, being a little bit personal opinion, is that the table game area, of our business for decades has not really evolved. You look at the slot machine, you look at Tito, you look at cashless and payments, but the traditional table game pit, unlike the airline industry when you're checking in or the hotel, it hadn't really evolved. It's very expensive. A lot of casinos under $25 minimum bet have trouble making a profit. So what's happened in the past 6 months post-COVID, when table games closed, it pushed a lot of people towards an electronic form of table gaming. And as a result, the technology was attractive to players because when table games opened back up, the revenue per day, the occupancy, the net win off of electronic table games didn't go down. It continues to go up. It really seems to be cultivating a new generation of player. And I think a lot of it is players that go home and they're used to the speed and the technology of a computer or a phone. And they're okay not having that human intervention. They prefer to have more technology. So what we're seeing is some of the major groups, operators in North America, are yielding up their live tables to $25. You'll have a tough time on the Las Vegas Strip and in a lot of local casinos now by the big operators finding anything under a $25 live table. Under $25, they're going towards technology. They're using electronic forms of table games, or they're using more automation to drive more profit and a different player experience. So I think we're seeing now from a table game evolutionary perspective, which is very far behind. I think finally when you at least walk up and down while you're here the Strip, I'd be interested, but I think you're going to see 1,000 more electronic table game seats in Nevada since January. You're going to see stadiums and you're going to see a lot of players enjoying themselves. And I think where we're heading with labor costs, labor shortages, and I think just the pure ability of technology to drive more handle and house advantage, it seems logical that we'll start evolving much more in the table game sector than we have in years past. That's what we're seeing.